Hi guys, can you hear me properly? Guys, can you hear me properly? If you can, please say yes, so I could sort of begin. I hope you guys are fine. There are some people who had an exam for business, so they can join us later. My purpose of today's class is basically to discuss questions, and you have little time left, so I just wanted to sort of make this session as useful. I don't want to solve a past paper, but I do want to solve concerns and questions that you have. If you don't have questions and concerns, then what I'll do is that I will then do the stuff that I feel is relevant. Okay. Does that make sense? I put 24 kids. Okay. Madiha, how about you start? If you have any question, you can begin. I tell you what I feel is an important discussion to have. I want to have a discussion first about, like the content that is probably, does unemployment have a 25 mark? Harshit, uh, unemployment can have 25 marks. You can make any question as 25 marks. 25 marks बनाने में कोई मसला थोड़ी होता है. Just give me 1 minute, guys. I just want to fix my iPad a little bit. Setting up. How long is this class? I'm going to have a 1.5 hour class for this one. Just give me 1 minute, guys. Let me start with, first of all, let me just tell you what I believe can come in your exam. Okay, let's start with that. Okay, and then we'll talk about unemployment. Maybe we can talk about it because that's a topic that I want to touch upon. Okay, so let's start with that. Just let me share the screen first. So you have the screen. Can you guys see the screen? Okay, let's start. So guys, first thing first, let me tell you what is my hint for Wednesday, and then I'll take your questions. Okay, so first thing first is this, that you need to make sure that for data response, the way things look like, for data response, we may have a question from theory of firm. Okay, the fixed cost, the variable cost, and all that. So they may want to sort of test our knowledge about theory of firm. So in this case, what I want everyone to do is to make sure that when they are answering this, going with, don't be go with anxiety, guys. Just relax. Let me tell you how to go about things as well in a little while. Okay. So theory of firm, I feel, is really important. तो इसके लिए अगर आपको कुछ तैयारी करनी है, guys, so make sure that you guys are well prepared when it comes to theory of firm. इसमें data response के लिए the level of information that is required isn't that much, so you don't need to worry about like detail, but you need to know your concepts. Okay, so make sure you know your concepts for this one. Cost and production is expected, and I'm expecting it in theory of firm in your data response. Okay, so it's like a compulsory question. The reason why I say so is because a lot of times we ignore this chapter, and that's why examiner wants to test us. So that's my first thing. The second thing is, what about essay questions? So let's talk about essay questions. Number one is, so this is question number one. So number two question will be, basically, if you ask me, will be from allocative efficiency or market failure. So you need to know, if you ask me, you need to know your allocative and productive efficiency. So definition of allocative, productive, and even dynamic efficiency. Okay, so you need to know this. Okay, and you need to also know this. Now, if you take it, oh, I'm not preparing this chapter, that's another story altogether, right? But if you're preparing this chapter, and then government. So A part is this, B part is government intervention to fix market failure. Okay, so that's one question. So I don't know, it could be your second question, it could also be your fourth or third question, or it could be a sixth question, but this is something which I feel you need to know. Okay, now the disclaimer here is, guys, that agar ye nahi aaya, so I mean, so I'm giving all these topics, so and I'm telling this from my, like from my experience, that at least 2 or 3 of these will make sense. Got it? So don't need to sort of worry about it, because काफी topics जो ऐसे हैं कि जो कि आते हैं, and that's why I'm giving it to you here. Okay, Abbas, I'll come back to you in 1 minute. And can you, Abbas, can you also write in the chat rather than Q&A? If you can do that, that'll be great. Okay, so write the same thing in chat. Okay, guys, then the third thing that I want to you guys to prepare for is, of course, your labor market. Labor market may, I want you guys to make sure that you know your perfect competition. Okay, now this can be a 25-mark question, by the way. If you ask me, the examiner will make sure that they give you a 25-mark question in labor market, because labor market is very popular in our variant, or with our kids who study for this variant. So labor market, perfect competition, in fact, 4 cases of labor market could be one thing you should prepare for. And also need to prepare for what we call, so this is your wage determination. Okay, here also I would like you guys to make sure you also focus on government intervention in labor market. Okay, so make sure you do that. Harshad, please ask me whatever question you have. You can write that. Number 4, guys, is going to be from theory of firm again, right? And most likely the question that we can see coming is this, because this theory of firm will have oligopoly tested here, and costs, etc., will be tested here. I have a feeling. Then this theory of firm is more likely to be coming from demand supply. Also comes in wage determination. Shushil is asking, demand and supply also comes in wage determination as perfect competition. I don't know what you mean by that, but elasticity of demand can come, yes, in the labor market. Let's talk about theory of firm. Theory of firm, the topics that I feel if somebody is preparing theory of firm, they need to know about monopoly, role of monopoly in terms of inefficiency, as well as benefits like economies of scale, etc. And its part A could be coming from a comparison of basically, like costs in the short run and long run. Okay, so this could be part A, and let me move this. That's part B. Now, if you're not preparing theory of firm for your essay question, you could sort of skip this. But these are all my sort of predictions. Then 5th one that I feel is unemployment. Okay, we'll talk about what do we need to prepare for unemployment, but basically causes, costs, which is consequences, and also theory of firm consists of chapter, if you want to ask me, chapter cost, production costs, perfect competition, monopoly, oligopoly, and so on. Unemployment may causes costs, which is consequences, and then policies. And within policies, remember, there is a supply side policy. So the natural rate of unemployment and supply side policies. Okay. There will also be a question on Harshil saying unemployment, market structures, and labor market. Well, there is one question that I missed out on, which is definitely going to come, is the indifference curve. I should have written it pehle, but indifference curve could be a first of the essay question, because this essay question could be the next one. But indifference curve is definitely coming in your exam utility. Primarily, we need to know all the three cases, which is normal, inferior, and Giffen, and how to make a demand curve out of this. From the theory. Also, you need to know, if you could, equilibrium, which is that MUX over price of X is equal to MUY over price of Y, driven through the indifference curve theory. Okay. Shock is saying, is it necessary to discuss Phillips curve while there are supply side policies? Well, in this there is a Phillips curve argument that you need to mention. So basically, when you look at causes, there is demand side and there's supply. There is demand side unemployment or equilibrium unemployment versus disequilibrium. You need to know that distinction. Abbas is saying, how would we answer wage differential questions which don't focus on main trade union and monopoly cases? For example, question which asks why accountant CEO are paid more than the other employees, which is a good question to ask. Let me answer this question in 1 minute. Let me give you one last prediction of mine. So paper ka khatam ho jaye, so that we could sort of look at number 7 is economic development. Plus growth. Okay, here basically, like GDP as a measure of welfare. Okay, so you need to know GDP as a measure of welfare. We need to also know whether GDP developed versus developing countries. Etc. Okay, let's come back to a question. Can you guys hear me? Guys, can you guys hear me now? Okay, great. Now, this is my prediction. Do you have any questions about my predictions first? And then I'll want to take on Abbas's question, which is a valid one to answer. Guys, anything that you want to ask? Okay, can I take on Abbas's? Can you repeat about theory of firm? What about theory of firm, my friend? What do you want me to repeat? Theory of firm basically is a big chapter. For my notes, for example, you're looking at chapter from production to cost to profit to perfect competition, monopoly, oligopoly, contestable market, and so on. So it's a huge chunk that you need to look at. But यहाँ पे theory of firm, you need to have a working knowledge about cost and oligopoly. That kind of a general question will come. So it won't be too much in detail. Rehan, the best way to do this is that there's a 45-day challenge on YouTube for A2. Just look at that. Start with these predictions and look at the videos for these chapters. And Nadeem, it's a huge task to revise that. I want to talk about labor market quickly. The labor market question that somebody was asking. So, Abbas, in the labor market question, where they say, for example, why are accountant CEO paid more than the other employees? So we'll talk about why wage differential happen. Wage differential may happen because of many reasons. Number one is due to labor market structure. You know, in one industry, some people are paid more than the other. But before we talk about, if it's a 25-mark question, before we talk about, can you go back to this for a minute? Yes, I can go back and you can take a screenshot of this. Take a screenshot so that we can move on. I apologize for some sections to have a bigger. Let me just do this. Take a screenshot of this first. Okay. Once you're done with this, then take a screenshot of this part. Probably easier. Yeah. So wage differential की बात करते हैं due to labor market structure. We talk about how labor market structure could be, for example, if you look at CEO versus. I just want to ask this question from Abbas. Abbas, this is a 25-mark question, right? Because if it's a 25-mark question, we say this, that if it's perfect competition, there will be labor is homogeneous, everyone is paid the same. So we start off with perfect competition, start off with the fact that in perfect competition, there will be no wage differential. Yeah, no wage differential. So we start with that, except when market is in disequilibrium. If your market is in disequilibrium, only then people are paid differently. For example, let's say demand for CEOs go up, people will move from one industry to another, and then till that time, the wages will be high. But in reality, there's no perfect competition. There are different labor market structure like monopsony, like trade union, and so on and so forth, which makes some people to be paid more than the others, right? Then you talk about CEOs are paid more because of also what we call due to non-competing groups. Here you talk about how the CEOs have a inelastic demand and supply due to labor market structure. The wages are much higher for CEOs because of the barriers to entry. It's not easy to become a CEO because CEO would have a lot of skills, which makes the supply to be inelastic, and demand is also inelastic because of productivity. And all of those factors will lead to the CEO. This is wage and quantity. Wage and quantity. The CEOs will be paid more than, let's say, a janitor, right? And as a result of that, economic rent will also be more than the transfer earning. Then you can talk about other factors, could be discrimination due to human capital, or due to basically risk or inconvenience of the business. Got it? Make sense? Are we good? Yes, we will share that on YouTube. Now, select would you mention trade? You will mention here in your labor market structures that presence of trade union can pay you more, presence of monopoly will pay you less than the competition, and so on and so forth. So you will mention this here, but not in the same detail. Got it? I want to ask, somebody was also asking me one more question. Any questions before we move on from this, guys? Are we able to move on? Okay, guys, somebody was asking, okay, can you tell me particular questions for this one? So indifference curve wala pehle main question batata hu, the one that I feel. So we need to know how through indifference curve we can draw an equilibrium. So there's one paper that I want to show you. Let me just go back to this in 1 minute. Let me just show you the paper that I'm referring to. Okay, I hope I find that paper. Just 1 minute, guys. I'm trying to find that folder. Yeah, something like this one. Use indifference curve analysis to explain the derivation of an individual demand curve for a normal. Somebody was asking me what kind of a question uh, would come here, and so this is the kind of question that I would prepare. Where how do you derive an individual demand curve for a normal good? So we'll talk about in this case that for an individual demand curve, you're talking about basically your budget line, your indifference curve. You mentioned the idea that where the indifference curve is tangent to the budget line, that's the point you will choose. And if the price of a good goes down, for example, you will move to an indifference curve, for example, here, let's say I2. So you move from point A to B. And from this information, we can draw a demand curve because when the price goes down, the quantity is going up for this good from, let's say, like Q0 to Q1. So from Q0 to Q1. So price goes down from PX to PX dash. You can draw a demand curve. So we talk about the demand curve is downward sloping. And when the price goes down, the income and substitution effect, they reinforce each other. And as a result of that, you are moving on from A to B. And therefore, this is basically an analysis you would have to show. And also talk about the point that you choose where the rational consumer is maximized utility, MUX over MUY, the slope of the budget line of indifference curve is equal to PX over PY, slope of the budget line. So this is the kind of question that I want you guys to prepare. And also then using indifference curve analysis whether the demand for a good will always increase when the price falls. So talk about how this could be different for different kind of goods. For the inferior goods, the demand does increase when the price goes down, but for different goods, it may not happen. So please prepare this kind of a question for your exam. So in the CEO question, I would mention economic rent and transfer earning. Make sense? Price increase diagrams are different, but practice them. Don't need to worry about it. We don't separate in this question, because in this question, it's a derivation of a demand curve. You don't need to worry about it. But if you do have time, then you can also look into drawing it this way. You can say this, that when the price of a good goes down, you make a line parallel like this one. You can say when the price of a good goes down, you buy more of the good, right? And then you can separate. But when you draw a demand curve, you don't need to show it because this is your price effect, right? So they are more keen in this question about looking not at income and substitution effect, but the whole price effect and how you buy more of a good and how you maximize your utility. That's why Madiha. That's why this is what different. Okay. Sorry, somebody was asking, so please do the same in price increase. I can try to do this in price increase in 1 minute. Should we mostly focus on macro for our exam, or do like unemployment and all? Oh, no, that's not a good strategy to focus only on macro. Trust me, macro both will come. The examiner this time around knows that you guys are doing selective studies, so you will have a mix of questions. Okay, so don't go with the only micro or only macro strategy. Exactly, I won't focus on it if they are simply asking for derivation of demand curve. But if they're saying, when the price of a good goes down, like in this question, you could talk about whether the demand curve for a good always increases. Basically, this is where the question is about income substitution effect of a price change. I can go through question 4 right now. Okay, I can go through that. In fact, let's do question number 4. But before that, 2B. 2B may let me quickly talk about 2B. 2B may what you need to talk about is the idea that when you have price of a good goes down, the quantity goes up. Let me just quickly show you all the 3 cases in terms of not a diagram, but a point that for normal goods, substitution effect says price goes down, the quantity goes up because you buy more of the good is becoming cheaper. Income effect says price goes down, real income goes up, and that's why you buy more of this good. So SE and IE reinforce each other. Okay. But for inferior good, substitution effect says price goes down, you buy more because the good is still becoming cheaper. But income effect says price goes down, real income goes up, and you will buy less of this good because the good is inferior. But because income effect is less than substitution effect, ultimately when the price goes down, the quantity goes up. So that's why for both these cases, we have a downward sloping demand curve. Okay, but for given goods, what we say, guys, is this: the substitution effect will say price goes down, quantity goes up because the good is becoming cheaper. But income effect says price goes down, real income goes up. But this good is also kind of an inferior good, the quantity will go down. But also the fact that because this is a very low quality inferior good, you will see that the substitution effect will actually be, uh, uh, in this case, your income effect will be greater than substitution effect, primarily because you will actually significantly cut down the quantity, and therefore when the price goes down, the quantity actually goes down, and that's why you have a upward sloping demand curve. Got it? A good example of Giffen could be very low quality rice, broken rice, like 30 rupees kilo wala rice. If price goes up, you move on to like 60 or 70 rupees kilo rice, and therefore you will not buy as much of this quantity as you were buying before, despite the rice category becoming cheaper. Okay, it's so Abbas, in the case of inferior goods, it's more price inelastic, as we did in the India paper, because the income effect is not moving in the same direction. So when the price goes up, quantity will go up, but not by that much. Okay, एक price increase का diagram बना देते हैं. I think everyone is asking price increase for inferior goods. So the rule you need to remember, if this is price increase happening, I'm going to make a diagram with this will be my new budget line, and the parallel line that you always make should always be parallel to the new budget line. So like I'm going to make a parallel line like this one. So this was my old budget line. Let's call it BL1. Okay, let's call this BL2, and let's call this, in fact, let's call this BL2, and let's call this BL3. Okay, now when the price goes down, this is my I naught, you will go from point A to point B. So from Q naught to Q1. Now, if it's a normal good, you will make your point C here. Okay, so both income and substitution effect are reinforcing each other. But if it's a Giffen good, I mean, if it's an inferior good, okay, so this is my Q1 to Q2 is saying your, and I'm going to remove this. Sorry guys, something happened. Yeah, I'm going to remove this BL3. So from Q1 to Q2, this is your substitution effect. Now, for inferior good, I'm going to make my curve here. Okay, Q2 to Q3. Got it? So A, B, and then C. Then how do you manage revision if you have so much? God bless you, first of all. Okay, but how do I manage revision? I will talk to answer in 2 minutes. Now for Giffen goods, you will make a curve here. Okay, before A and B, like point C. So Giffen goods will be here. Got it? So this is the price rise ka example. So for where is economics happening before math? Which one is AM? Which one is PM? Eco. Okay, guys. First thing first is this, that stop studying for economics by tomorrow, because tomorrow is tomorrow is a rest day. I'm not allowed to invigilate. There are people who invigilate, so I'm not even allowed to enter, by the way. So eco, agar subah ko beta ek to very important cheez hai, please you need to sleep well. If you have 2 papers in the same day, so you have a good 5 hours of testing. You can't go into 5 hours of testing without better sleep, right? Number 2 is this: conserve your energy. Make sure that you don't sleep well, and make sure that in between the two, you eat sufficient amount of food. A great thing is keep some chocolates with you. Also, it's really hot. Make sure you have some liquids as well. I completely agree with you, Ashir. It doesn't make sense to have the two major paper, eco and math, are always done together. So I am surprised why are they acting. Okay, guys, please. This is another kind of a question that I want you guys to prepare. Compare the characteristics to developers developing. Please don't ask me to solve this straight from the notes and discuss whether GDP is the best measure of country standard of living. Please prepare this one as well. So did you draw the new difference curve right? Yeah, I did. Didn't I? So this one was the last one was so for price increase, right? Okay, guys, any other question that you guys have? Anything you guys want to ask me? Oh, how do you draw it in the imaginary? The way I draw it in the imaginary one is, look at this. This was my initial budget line. This was my the imaginary budget line, which is tangent to my line, to my new budget line. So I made a line which is parallel. Got it? Which topic exactly? अभी मैंने पूरा Zen. I spent the whole first 20 minutes on giving you the topics that are about to come. I gave you my suggestions. Didn't I give you my suggestions? Can you skip labor market? Yeah, if you can skip labor market, if your macro is solid, your utility is solid, and your market failure is solid. Whole macro is solid, utility, and yeah. Outline for question number 6. Which question number 6 are we talking about? I'm not making an outline for number 6. Straight from my notes. Open the notes, and you will get this. Ryan, yes, this will be uploaded in the exam. Your new indifference curve should be intersecting, Abbas is saying, the shifted budget line and not the imaginary budget line. What are you saying, my friend? Your new indifference curve should be, oh, you're right. Oh my God, you are right. For this one, the problem is you are absolutely right. For this one, for the third case, let me draw it again. You are right. The key to making the third case is that we need to make flat. Abbas, you are so right. Yeah, so for this one, the key is to make a very flat kind of a diagram. So let me try to do that. So this is a little tricky. Okay, but you're so right. Let me draw the third case, right? Abbas, that's what you're saying, right? No, I'll tell you how this happens. You make a very flat kind of a graph. Flat kind of a graph like this one as well. Okay, so let's make flat diagrams, and then also for this one, try to make this and then bring it a little closer. Okay, so we will have one point here, A and B, right? So this is going to be my Q0 to Q1 substitution effect, and this will be my Q3, Q2. Got it, Abbas? It is tough to do that, but I did a mistake here as well. So thank you for pointing out. You were right. For this one, we need to make a flat curve. I hope I didn't do the same thing for other. Did I do the same thing for others? I don't think so, right? So yeah, that's the trick. Make it very flat. Got it? Does that make sense, Abbas? Somebody was asking a very valid question. What was the question somebody was asking? Nehru, yes. Nehru was somebody was asking Nehru. Let me talk about Nehru theory, because that's an important thing. It can come in exam. Guys, so the Phillips curve theory says this, that you have your unemployment rate here, right? And your inflation rate here. Okay, according to them, there is a trade-off in the short run, but not in the long run between unemployment and inflation. So this is a monetarist view. They say this, that this is your long run Phillips curve. And this long run Phillips curve is drawn at U star, which is basically full employment. Okay. The only unemployment that happens at full employment is what we call your frictional unemployment or equilibrium unemployment. And that's why it could be very little, like 3%. But when you look at equilibrium, your Phillips curve could be, your short-run Phillips curve could be like this, which is probably made at an inflation rate, let's say, of 4%, right? But when you draw this curve, the inflation is expected to be, the expected rate of inflation is also 4%. So not only the actual inflation is 4%, but the 4% is also what we call the expected inflation. And this U star is the natural rate of unemployment. Exactly, Dorisha. It is the natural rate of unemployment. It's also called non-accelerating inflation rate of unemployment. Why do you call this? That if you deviate away from this, you will only cause inflation to accelerate. So for example, the government, they did a demand side policy. Demand side policy kya hoti hai? Fiscal or monetary policy. Okay, they did a demand side policy to solve this problem. Correct. So when they do a demand side policy, what will happen is this, that initially people will find that the wages are kind of promising, so they end up coming to the market. Okay, so those people who were sitting at home voluntarily looking for good work are suddenly in the market, so this unemployment will go down to 2%. But because demand side policy means AD go up, which will lead to price to go up, because already the economy is at full employment, when the AD goes up, inflation will happen, right? So this will make the AD curve to shift to the right, but at the same time, inflation will now go up to, let's say, 6%. So look at this, guys. When we were at point A, the expected rate of unemployment was 4%, and the actual was also 4%. But now when we move to point B, the actual rate is going to be 6%, but expectation was 4%. People are, in other words, in a money illusion. They are believing that they have a higher purchasing power than what it is. When people realize that their purchasing power is not that high, they will now move to back home. They will realize that there's no point of working, and the short-term Phillips curve will shift to the right to point C, where the expected rate will become now 6%, which means that when you do a demand side policy for a supply side kind of an issue, you only end up inflation to accelerate. Ultimately, inflation will come to 6%, and unemployment will go back to its natural rate of 4%. Does that make sense? So this is basically your analysis, which we talk about for Phillips curve. Abbas is saying, sir, is this diagram on a YouTube video? Yes, there is a Phillips curve. Yes, there is a Phillips curve diagram. So unemployment will not change. So how do you solve the problem? According to the monetarists, they say you can solve this problem through supply side policies. Why? Because the unemployment that is happening at full employment is what we call equilibrium unemployment. It's not a disequilibrium unemployment. So for equilibrium unemployment, we use supply side policies. This is people who are frictionally unemployed and so on. Don't we draw the equilibrium unemployment diagram which shows the gap between the total labor? Well, if the question is asking, I'm just talking about, this is a discussion about the Phillips curve. So this is a different story altogether. If the question is about, causes of unemployment, then we'll draw that diagram. But the idea behind this is that I wanted to talk about what Nehru is. Manal is saying, what if your macro isn't strong? Is that an issue? It is a serious issue, Manal, honestly. But two micro questions is a tough one. Trust me, if you have to do 2 essays on micro, it's pretty risky. Got it? Guys, you have to do me a favor. We are 35 of you guys. Either you write to me, okay, but do tell me after the exam how the exam went, okay? Or you can write on Holy and mention how the exam go, because I literally don't get to hear anything from anyone. If you are my school student, please write to me on my email. If you have my phone number, you can send me an SMS, because I really want to know how the paper goes. Right after the paper, only few kids end up writing and they tell me. And when the result comes, yes, of course, I hear from you guys. Last year, I got a distinction in Sindh and Balochistan, and I'm hoping that this could also happen this year. So I'm just hoping this would happen. Inshallah, inshallah. Okay, guys, I'm going to go now. Tomorrow we will meet same time as well. And please, if you have questions, you just write to me and I'll answer it here. Okay, yes, it's based on all the papers. Okay, let me go back to the topics that you need to prepare for. Okay, this is my prediction. Prediction. Yep. You can also post this if you want to post it or share it with your friends, but don't hate me. Don't hate me if post with credit. Yeah. Plus, but don't hate me if this doesn't come. Okay. So don't say कि suddenly आपने डुबो दिया. Yeah. Is the class tomorrow? Is the exam tomorrow? Yes. Okay. So tomorrow's class will keep it at a later time. Okay. How about tomorrow we meet at 7? Does 7 work? Okay, 7 p.m. tomorrow. I'm going to write that on my email for all the students, and I'm also going to share this on Kohli. And what I'll also do, guys, is that I will come tomorrow with some questions which can be likely to come. Okay, so I'll come up with my prediction questions as well for tomorrow. Okay, take care, guys. God bless you. Please stay in touch and give me, yes, Hashir. Ashir, 25 mark questions. If your topic is not your favorite one, don't do it. Okay, just a quick tip. Bye bye, guys. Have a good one. Take care. Love you all.